The Constitution of Mongolia provides for freedom of religion, and the Mongolian government generally respects this right in practice. However, the law somewhat limits proselytism, and some religious groups have faced bureaucratic harassment or been denied registration. There have been few reports of societal abuses or discrimination based on religious belief or practice. Religious demography. The country has an area of 604,247 square miles and a population of 3.1 million. Buddhism and the country's traditions are closely tied, and while 26.5% of the population are atheists, 59.7% of religious Mongolians practice some form of Buddhism, Lamist Buddhism, and within it the Gelugpa school is the traditional and dominant religion. When socialist controls on religion and on the country's traditions ended in 1990, interest in the practice of Buddhism grew. Kazakhs, most of whom are Muslim, are the largest ethnic minority, constituting approximately 4% of the population nationwide and 85% in the western province Bayanagi. Kazakhs operate Islamic schools for the children. They sometimes receive financial assistance from religious organizations in Kazakhstan and Turkey. There is a small number of Christians, including Roman Catholics, Russian Orthodox, but especially Protestants. In the capital, Ulaanbaatar, approximately 30,000 citizens, or 3% of the registered population of the city, practice Christianity. Many Mongols practice shamanism. The majority of these resides in the countryside. There are also small communities of the Baha'i faith on Ananda Marga in Ulaanbaatar. Missionaries are present in the country. Status of religious freedom, legal and policy framework. The Constitution provides for freedom of religion, and the government generally respected this right in practice. However, the law limits proselytizing, and some religious groups seeking registration face burdensome bureaucratic requirements and lengthy delays. The Constitution explicitly recognizes the separation of church and state. Although there is no state religion, ethnic Mongolian traditionalists believe that Buddhism is the natural religion of the country. The government contributed to the restoration of several Buddhist sites that are important religious, historical, and cultural centers. The government did not otherwise subsidize Buddhist or any other religious groups. A religious group must register with the Ministry of Justice and Home Affairs, a decentralized and bureaucratic process, in order to legally function as an organization. Religious institutions must re-register annually. The law allows the government to supervise and limit the number of places of worship and number of clergy. The government used the registration process as a mechanism to limit the number of places for religious worship. However, there were no reports that it limited the number of clergy during the reporting period. Groups must provide the following documentation when registering: a letter to the National Ministry requesting registration, a letter from the City Council or other local authority granting approval to conduct religious services, a brief description of the organization, its charter, documentation of the founding of the local group, a list of leaders or officers, brief biographic information on the person wishing to conduct religious services, and the expected number of worshippers. The Ulaanbaatar City Council and other local legislative bodies require similar documentation prior to granting approval to conduct religious services, while the Ministry of Justice and Home Affairs possesses the ultimate authority to approve an organization's application. This appears to be largely pro forma. In practice, local legislative bodies assess the applications. The registration process is decentralized with several layers of bureaucracy and, under the best of circumstances, can take months to complete. Registration with the Ministry of Justice and Home Affairs in the capital may not be sufficient if a group intends to work in the countryside where local registration is also necessary. Throughout the country, there were were 391 registered places of worship, including 217 Buddhist, 143 Christian, 5 Baha'i, 24 Muslim, and 2 shamanistic. During the period covered by this report, the ministry registered 16 new Christian churches, 11 Buddhist temples, 19 Muslim mosques and 2 shaman temples. In Ulaanbaatar, the registration of 1 Buddhist and 3 Christian religious organizations which own a temple and 3 churches, respectively, remained under consideration. Religious instruction is not permitted in public schools. There is a school to train Buddhist lamas in Ulaanbaatar. Restrictions on religious freedom. While the law does not prohibit proselytizing by registered religious groups, it limits such activity by forbidding spreading religious views to non-believers by force, pressure, material incentives, deception, or means which harm health or morals or are psychologically damaging. There were no instances of prosecutions under this law during the reporting period. A Ministry of Education directive bans mixing foreign language or other training with religious teaching or instruction. Monitoring of the ban, particularly in the capital area, is strict. There were no reported violations of the ban in recent years. Religious groups that violate the law may not receive an extension of the registration. If individuals violate the law, the government may ask their employers to terminate their employment. No such cases were reported during the reporting period. Registration and re-registration are burdensome for all religious groups. The length and documentation requirements of the process discourage some organizations from applying. Some Christian groups stated that local officials believed there were too many churches, or that there should at least be parity in the registration of new Buddhist temples and new Christian churches. No churches were known to have been refused registration in Ulaanbaatar during the reporting period. The applications of 4 religious organizations remained under consideration. Authorities in Tuvamag, near Ulaanbaatar, routinely denied registration to churches. There are currently no churches registered in the Amag, and several churches were again denied registration during the reporting period. A non-governmental organization filed a formal complaint with the National Human Rights Commission in May 2007 concerning the refusal by Tuvamag authorities to register Christian churches. In June 2007, the Commission wrote to the Tuvamag legislative body stating that the body's actions were in violation of the Constitution. Until the past year, almost all mosques throughout the country were registered as branches of one central Islamic organization. However, during the reporting period, the Ministry of Justice and Home Affairs clarified that each mosque needed to seek additional approvals from local authorities in their areas. This separate registration generally proceeded smoothly. However, one mosque in Dhaka New Amag was told that the Amag legislature had approved its application, but it did not receive documentation, leaving it unable to register with the Ministry of Justice and Home Affairs. Unregistered religious institutions are often able to function in practice but potentially face difficulties with authorities and are unable to sponsor foreign clergy for visas. Visa problems especially affect Christian churches, many of which depend on foreign clergy. The Muslim community in Ulaanbaatar reported that authorities were helpful in assisting its efforts to construct a mosque, including donating a piece of land for the site. There were no reports of religious prisoners or detainees or of forced religious conversions. Religions in Mongolia are in unequal situation with regard to funding their activity. Buddhism was totally destroyed in socialist time, and so it has not enough resources for adequate recovery. On the contrast, Christian and especially Protestant organizations have significantly more funds coming from abroad for the missionary activity. This resulted in the quick spreading in Mongolia at the expense of its traditional religions, Buddhism and shamanism. Societal abuses and discrimination. There were few reports of societal abuses or discrimination based on religious belief or practice in the period covered by this report. Citizens generally were tolerant of the beliefs of others, however, because in the past humanitarian assistance was accompanied by proselytizing activity. There was some friction between foreign Christian missionary groups and citizens. Some social conservatives have criticized foreign influences on youth and children, including foreign religions and the alleged use of material incentives to attract converts.